Never enough time.
No, never.
Never enough time. I know. I always learn so much. It's my highlight of the week for sure. I love it.
Yeah,
So
Mickey was
fun.
Mark again, which is fantastic.
Mark, I'm going to
That's
add
right.
you on LinkedIn so we can keep our convo going there.
There you
Yeah.
go.
I think everyone is on.
Everybody back.
Not like we get a choice.
I know, right? You get kicked back out unless you have to, unless you drop off to go to the bathroom or something, right?
All right. Now's the time where anybody new on the call, Tilo, I think you might be one, can say hello, introduce yourself, say who you are, where you're from, and drop your info in the chat.
Okay, I will do that. I will write a note in the chat, right?
Yeah, but go ahead and say hello right now.
Okay, so hi, my name is Thilo. I'm calling in from Germany, and I'm the CEO, founder and CEO of Deutsche Interim, which is an interim management provider in the German market. And we serve all industry sectors and all functional areas. A couple of things we don't do: architecture, medical, but most industries and most functional areas on C-level and senior management level. That's more or less what we do. And we have a sister company, which is Swiss Interim. So we serve the Swiss market with Swiss Interim and the German market with Deutsche Interim. And my name is Ferrari. I'm not related to the car company, which is a question I always get. So no car involved. No car involved.
That's too bad.
I know.
At least they could give you a free car.
Anybody else new that wants to say hello? Chris.
Hi guys, I'm Chris.
Hi.
I'm Chris Mendes. I'm talking from Brazil. I'm right now in the south of Brazil in a city called Porto Alegre, and I'm founder of a company called Chiefs Group. We are an on-demand platform focusing C-level group and C-level and executive on demand. We do some projects as well. I think it's really related to what Tito Ferrari is doing as well. So it's very nice to be here with you. I'm very excited. Thank you so much.
Welcome. I'm not going to pronounce your name right. Zeynep.
Great. You pronounce
All right.
it greatly. Hi, everyone. I'm Zeynep Bilgiç from Turkey, Istanbul. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Workflex. We have two websites, workflexnow.com and workflexnow co UK. We have just recently launched to UK, and it's a kind of talent platform or on-demand talent. And we have a special algorithm for the matching as well. We have also C-Flex for C-level executives, but it's going to be launched soon. So I've been in this journey for the last 3 years as an entrepreneur. And before that, for 20 years, I was in corporate life. And also I recently, one of my books will be recently published in 2 days ago. It's all about freelance ecosystem and open talent platforms in Turkey. Hi to everyone. I'm very glad to meet with you guys. It's first time and I'm a bit excited.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for being here. Be sure to put your book and the link to your book in the chat.
Sure, but unfortunately it's in Turkish right now, but I'm planning to publish it in English as well. So unfortunately you're not going to understand. Maybe you can use ChatGPT, but not from
exactly.
the book.
It's a good use for ChatGPT.
So we're very new, but I promise I will translate it in English and then I will put the book as well.
Well, or at least, put the link up and then we can at least, put it out on social and talk about that stuff, help you sell some books.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, no worries. No worries.
Anybody else?
I'll go. I forget if I've introduced myself. I've only been to maybe one of these, but Adam Zolak. I'm in Denver, Colorado when I'm home, or often in the middle of nowhere with my Starlink. But I am a early stage builder. I love working with startups when it's 1, 2, 3, 5 people. I'm a software developer by trade, but I love influencing culture and process and figuring out how to go from 0 to 1. So I'm very interested in this space, the future of work, more humane work practices and just making it all one happy ball of life. So I'm here to get
That's-
in and learn from all of you.
Well, that's awesome. Well, welcome. Adam, have you, when you've been out, doing your thing, have you guys, and maybe anybody else, have you guys seen the Starlink trains that go across the sky? Who's seen those things? They're crazy, right? I mean, I was down in the Grand Canyon, and like in the middle of nowhere, no connection, and watching the stars. The stars are so amazing down there, and all of a sudden, the whole sky, was a big streak of satellites coming across. It's just definitely a big paradigm shift. But for being out wherever you want to be and doing what you want to do, it's definitely the future for sure. So,
Anybody else? Oh, we
Hey.
got two. Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Spring. I've attended in person one other time here in Boulder, Colorado. And my background is open innovation and crowdsourcing with the federal government for about 8 years. And then the last 6 years, I've been independent. My interest now is working on creating and being part of communities of contributors and solvers to make the world a better place, and figuring out how to bring those people together with the people who want to solve the problems. And I have a day job with a company called Idea Scale that does innovation software management, and I work with their clients to give them advice on innovation strategy. So it's nice to see you all again, and I'll try to be more consistent so I recognize more faces.
yeah, great, Tammy. Let's get. We need to get coffee since we're both in town. I know we said that last time, but
I
let's
know
make
we're
it
going to
happen.
say it every time until we're,
Until we do it.
bonkers.
I know, until we run into each other at Spruce or something like that.
That'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, sounds good.
Kamal.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Kamal Kataria. I'm in Vancouver, Canada. I run an IT staffing firm called Dasro Consulting. We work in government space in Canada and looking to expand into the United States this year. So I met John at one of the events, so that's how I learned about this, and thought I'll come and chat with like-minded people, learn more about future of work.
Great. Thanks for being here.
Welcome.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pass the mic to Glenn. Glenn, you want to announce the research?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks very much indeed. Yes, the Future Work Study 2023 is here. It's out there. Hopefully everyone's had the opportunity to skim through it. We had the opportunity to present it at the Freelance Business Month this week. Also had a couple of articles out, a few more coming as well. So any questions, thoughts, ideas on that, please get back to me. And also, if Brandon and team allow me, I'd be very happy to take a bit of an overview on one of these calls, take 15 minutes or so to take through some of the findings that we've got from a European perspective, but also maybe some of the hypotheses as well. I'd also like to say today that Corey has the best background there. I'd love to be in that room there. My goodness, he has to give me some interior design tips because that place looks absolutely fantastic. I want to move in.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll give a home office design session next call.
Yeah, for sure.
Una, do you want to talk about your new launch?
Yes, I would love to. So I'm Una from the Indie List in Ireland, and we are a young and small platform that concentrates on marketing, communications, and digital talent. We've been in business for about 3.5 years, and this week we just launched a new service called Fractional Marketing Specialists. So what we found within our network of people who were signing up was just a huge amount of people with seriously impressive C-suite experience. And they had chosen for one reason or another to leave the corporate world. You know, the higher they went in their role, the further they got from the thing that they loved most, and they found themselves managing P&L and managing up and managing people. Actually, what they really wanted to be doing was the stuff that they were really, really good at and they were really, really passionate about. So on the other hand, there are a lot of businesses here in Ireland, particularly SMEs, who need that senior marketing expertise, but don't necessarily or can't always afford to pay for it on a full-time basis. I know that the fractional sort of C-suite idea is massive in the US and other markets, but in Ireland, it's a sort of it's a very sort of unknown trend, but we believe that it's going to hit hard next year, and we want to be the first and the first company associated with this world. So fingers crossed. We've had a fantastic reaction to it since we've launched, just from other specialists, so they're really, really senior consultants wanting to sign up. So that's really fantastic. So like on Monday we had like 35 people earmarked. We now have about 75 earmarked in the last few days, so we're super happy about that. Thanks, Brandon.
Congrats. You bet. And
really
sharing
thanks, Una.
sharing a link
Brandon,
with
can I
Una's
just Can I just add to what Una's been saying? I think this is so relevant. I lived through the same experience. I was looking after Nordics, Baltics, and Central Eastern Europe for a company, and I was ending up sort of watching other people work. I was spending time on calls, on meetings, and looking at spreadsheets, but realized that I actually wasn't doing any work. I wasn't moving the needle at all. And I think if you're too young and too poor to be retired, it's time to think again. I think more and more people are going through the same experiences. So yeah, very good to share that.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks, Glenn.
Great stuff, guys. Yeah. All right,
Go
my
ahead,
turn.
John.
Brandon?
Yep.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited today because Etan Bernstein, one of the co-founders and head of ecosystems at Velocity Network Foundation, is here to kind of update us on what's happening there. But I think early on, I don't know when Dror and I connected. Dror and I connected probably 2 years ago. When did you guys start, Etan? Like 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Over 4 years ago.
4
I think
years. Yeah, so it must have been. Yeah, it must have been at the very beginning, and this grand vision of creating this ecosystem and all the amazing things that the Velocity Foundation has done. And so we wanted, Etan to come on and really talk about what they're doing, the idea of, portable identity and credentials across platforms, because it's something that we've been really, really, a fan of and really felt like was important. I have to, give a big shout out to Mike Morris from Torque, because back in the days when he was doing TopTal, he and Dave, you were a big part of that inspiration. We were all talking about how do we do this before you guys, before we were aware of Velocity. And I think what Velocity's created is a lot of momentum in this idea. So super psyched to have you here today, Etan, and talk about kind of what you guys are up to and how platforms might take advantage of kind of portable identity and identity, all the kinds of things you guys are working on. So take it away.
Great. Thank you, John, for inviting me. And I do want to thank John Healy's also on the call, because John, both in his context in Open Assembly and also in his context in the World Employment Confederation, has been very engaged in Velocity. And probably most of what I know about in the contingent world, staffing world, and the relevance to what we're doing in Velocity, I've learned from John Healy. So thanks, John. I see you're here. I'm going to do a few minutes overview of Velocity. I know some of you on this call probably were the last time Dwal presented in this forum and maybe have seen some materials, but I want to make sure we level set. But I do want to make sure we leave some time really to both update you on where we are now, because the big vision hasn't changed, but the results really have over since probably the last time many of you have heard about Velocity. But I also wanted to hopefully have a little bit of a conversation with this forum, because when Brandon and I were preparing for this session, he asked how many of the talent platforms, the open talent platforms, are already on Velocity. And I said, well, we have quite a few large staffing companies, but none of the open talent platforms. And we talked a little bit about why and whether interoperability is viewed as a good thing, a competitive thing, a risk, an opportunity for you. And so I want to hopefully trigger that discussion, if not in this forum, then at least in your minds, and to hopefully continue that conversation with you. And so let me pull up my presentation. But as background, I have spent my co-founder and I have spent the last 25 years each in HR, both within corporations and as consultants to corporations. So much not in the space many of you are in, but really in the more classic HR space, and in helping global organizations. And in helping global organizations drive digitalization and digital transformation of their HR function. And through that work, we stopped and we asked ourselves a few years ago, why is this so hard? And we're all dreaming of a very digital world with transactions being so much easier and everyone using AI way before AI was hot to match people to jobs and to learning opportunities and to career opportunities, and a global open labor market with people having opportunities around the world and employers being able to bring on board people easily, and not just full-time employees, but a whole range of types of employment models. All those ideas are not new. I assume many of you have been in this space for quite a while. I know we've been talking about those things for 20 years. And we started asking, why is a lot of this not happening? And maybe because we are very tech oriented, and we started asking where are the root causes for some of these things. And we at least got to the understanding that a lot of it sits in the underlying way data about individuals, their skills, their experiences, their knowledge, their certificates, their credentials is created, shared, consumed, verified, owned across the labor market. There's no consistency. It's all over the place. And as a result, there's an amazing amount of friction. I recently spoke at a conference in Vegas, and a senior executive, an HR executive, came to me after the meeting really excited. And she said, I immigrated from India 35 years ago after graduating from university. And because no one would accept my degree in an Indian university, I had to take a 4-year degree again in the United States to be recognized that I have a bachelor's degree so I could get a job, right? That's an extreme case, but we have plenty of cases where individuals are not able to show their capabilities, their experiences, their skills in a trusted way. And as a result, we have all this friction. And that's what triggered us to go to our friends at many of the big HR companies, tech companies, and so on, and say, is this a problem that you're experiencing? And do you want to work together to address this challenge? And as a result of those conversations with some of the companies you see up at the top as founding members, 4.5 years ago, we formed the Velocity Network Foundation. And the Velocity Network Foundation was formed in order to collaboratively, and now we're up to 78, 79 organizations. You can see most of their logos here. Collaboratively work together to form, launch, and utilize the Velocity Network, which is an open, public, decentralized utility for verifiable digital credentials. Those are a lot of big words. Some of you may understand what I just said, and for some of you that might be very, very new. But I will walk you through some of the story behind this. And so I'm here representing the Velocity Network Foundation and its members and the work that we've done over the last 4 years around that. And I don't think I need to explain to anyone on this call around how the world of work has changed now. Industry 4.0 has created an incredible amount of friction or challenge around matching of the right skills in this developing market, and how COVID and the changes after it and since then have put a lot of difficulty on the market. And our view is that one of the real underlying problems is that there's no lack of digital data being created about people throughout their work. Your systems in your companies probably also are generating quite a lot of information about the individuals that you're placing and that you're assigning to tasks that are exchanging opportunities on your marketplaces, right? But employers are creating an incredible amount of data about their employees, and education institutions are creating an incredible amount of data of their students and alumni, and now lifelong learners, and licensing bodies are documenting more and more information about their licensees, and so on. So, our claim is, it's not that there's any lack of data about people through their education and careers. The problem is that data is stored within silos within these organizations. Individuals don't have control or ownership over that data. And as a result, every time they need to transact in the world of work or education, where they need to be able to prove that they have certain skills, certain experiences, certain licenses, certain certificates, And they need to show those to recruiters, to education institutions, to licensing bodies, to government, to anyone that they need to be able to show that they have those credentials. That is incredibly painful because individuals don't have any access to that information, and the relying parties or the organizations that need that data actually need to go to the sources, or they're paying background screeners a lot of money, or they're taking risk around fraud, any of those reasons, right? And so we ask, can't there be a better way of getting this data into the hands of the individuals and solving reducing a lot of this friction? And so our view is, if all these different solutions, whether they're technical applications and service providers and platforms like many of you operate, are using data, can't we make it easier for everyone to leverage trusted, self-controlled information that they can use to make digital transactions in the world of work as easy as digital transactions in the world of finance? When I'm in front of a room in a conference, I often say, how many of you in the room have recently taken out your phone and paid using Apple Pay or Google Pay? And usually, I won't ask you all to pick up your hands, but usually 95% of the people in the audience raise their hand. I ask, how many of you have actually used a piece of dollars or euros or pounds or wherever you are in the world, liras, and less people. And I ask, how many people of you have you written a check out of a checkbook? And sometimes there's one or two in a large audience, depending where in the world that conversation is. And when you think about it, that makes absolutely sense. How much safer and faster and easier is using your Apple Pay or Google Pay? But a check is exactly what we're using all across the employment world. Basically, a resume is a check. It's an IOU that means nothing until it goes to the relying party, who needs to check with the issuer, go back to the bank. Think of how painful, how much risk, how much fraud there is in checkbooks, why they've disappeared from the world versus what we're doing. But in employment, we're still relying on that kind of information, self-reported, unstructured, unverified information. And so the vision of the Velocity Network Foundation is a big one, and we invite you all to be part of it. That's why we believe it has to be addressed by an open community of the industry, is to fix this broken data layer underlying the labor market. And how do we do that? Well, our vision is to turn all education and career-related records into immutable, verifiable digital credentials that are owned by the individual. So not everyone agrees with this idea, but we strongly believe at the Velocity Network Foundation that individuals should have a basic human right in 2022 to own the data about themselves, who they are, what they've done, where they've worked, what experience they have, what skills they've acquired, what certificates and licenses they have, and so on. That may seem like an obvious statement, but when you think about the way the world works today, it absolutely isn't the way the world works today. Your university owns your degree, and you need to pay to have a verified sign of it. And when you want to get a job, your employer goes to Equifax and pays $100 to verify some of your information if it's in the US, and so on. And so our objective is to get to a point where individuals can claim not only, for instance, from the university, a nice piece of paper they can put on their wall, but a digital verifiable credential to add to their digital wallet, stack their credentials throughout their lives, and share those in a completely private, controllable digital transaction, like any financial transaction, only with those organizations which they want to, and only for the purposes that they choose to do so. And when we say all career and education records, we actually mean a very broad range of types of information. I'm sure many of you on this call are already very deep into understanding we're moving toward a skill-based economy, right? Where just having information about my formal education or the job history I've had is almost meaningless, but really much more important to have a proof of individual skills and recognitions and achievements and courses and licenses. And one of the really interesting things is realizing that when you start thinking about what data is valuable in the labor market as we're changing, and the labor market is changing, it's all kinds of interesting things. I'll just give an example. I was sitting with a company, a startup that's focused on gig work in the blue collar manufacturing space, right? And we were talking about what kinds of credentials would be valuable for gig workers in the blue collar manufacturing space, and things that aren't even listed here that are not skills and not achievements and not performance, but even something simple as the fact that I was in an assignment for 4 weeks and I came in on time every day, right? That's not a skill and it's not an experience, but if I'm hiring someone for a manufacturing floor for a few weeks, that's valuable information. If I have a clean record of safety, if I was assigned and I was at a number of assignments, and in every one of them I had a clean slate of perfect safety record, that is very relevant information to be able to take with me so that I can find job opportunities. And for an employer to know that when I'm hiring someone for those kinds of assignments. And you can start imagining all kinds of other kinds of information for different roles, different positions, different industries that are valued. How do we do this wonderful thing, or how do we achieve this great idea? We basically publish a set of open protocols that enable anyone in the world, all of you, all your individuals, all employers, all institutions, to participate. And they do so by anyone holding data. So anyone who creates data about an individual, an issue, what we would call an issuer, is able to connect to an individual holding a digital wallet. We're not a wallet. The Velocity Network is not a wallet. It's an ecosystem of wallets. Think about the internet and a browser. Just like the internet is not a browser, you can have many browsers on the internet. We have many wallets on the Velocity Network. Today, 5, and that will be growing to dozens within the next few years that are already, some of them are underway. And the issuer basically connects on a peer-to-peer basis with the individual, offers a credential. You can't push something somewhere. There's no database to push things to. It's an interaction between the issuer and the individual. It says, do you want this record? Do you want this credential? Do you want this certificate? If the individual says yes, a credential is transferred from the issuer to the individual, stored on their personal device under their control and ownership. And at that point, the issuer also issues a cryptographic key with no personal identity, just a long string of letters and numbers, which is stored on the Velocity blockchain. It's that key that creates the trust and immutability, not the individual holds the credential, and the proof is anchored to the Velocity blockchain. And from this point on, the issuer no longer needs to exist. Under GDPR, the individual can ask the issuer to erase the data. If the issuer goes out of business, the individual isn't stuck without the information. You know, around the world, hundreds of universities and colleges shut down every year. And individuals who have degrees from those institutions have a problem proving that they have their degrees. Employers go out of business, and individuals have problems showing that they actually work there, right? So this solves that problem. And then the individual can share those digital credentials with anybody that they want, freely, openly, just like you would share a CV or a LinkedIn profile. And those are verifiable credentials at this point. They're not verified, they're verifiable. And if the relying party, that could be a talent platform, a recruiter, an institution hiring, and so on, would like to verify those credentials, they basically retrieve the cryptographic key that's stored on the blockchain. And through some cryptography, which I can't explain, so please don't ask, basically verify 4 things digitally within a second or half of a second. One is that credential is actually issued to that person. So I can't take a credential from someone else, put it on my wallet, and claim it's mine. 2, that it was actually issued by a trusted source and not someone claiming to be that trusted source. So the Velocity Network actually KYBs, doesn't know your business process, for every issuer on the network. So if you have a person claiming that they have a credential from Harvard, any user knows that it was actually issued by Harvard University and not by a Russian hacker claiming to be Harvard. 3, that credential hasn't been tampered with in any way. So if a person is very sophisticated, hacks their own phone and makes any change to a credential, that will come up as tampered. And 4 is that credential hasn't been revoked. So we know that in the labor market, we have cases where an issuer, for instance, a nursing board, may issue a credential and then later have to revoke that credential. We can't erase credentials on the blockchain. So we have a method using a revocation registry, which is looked up. And those 4 checks happen digitally in a second, which today may take a week or 2 weeks or a month in the real world to verify. And at a fraction, at the cost, someone said, at the cost of a stamp, basically, of an international mail stamp, and not at the cost of anything that today exists in terms of verifying the information. So that's basically what we do. And I think one of the important things, very important things that we put as an emphasis is we want to make this the ubiquitous infrastructure. We call it the Internet of Careers, because just like the internet, there aren't a few internets. Some of us are old enough to remember days of intranets and networks before we all got on the internet, and you could only connect to that. If you were on America Online, you could only contact people on America Online. And if you were on another network, you could only contact those. The aim here is to enable global interoperability. And to do that, one of our principles is that the network itself does not do any application. Why don't we do any application? Because then we would be in potential conflict with vendors and participants in the network. So the network, think of the network as an underlying pipeline, and not doing any. It's like the internet has no application. The Velocity network has no application. All it is the set of utilities and features and compliance frameworks and so on to ensure that anyone can issue credentials to any person. Any person can share those credentials with any application, any organization, and all can be trusted and ensure that it's compliant. And in that sense, we're just these underlying rails. But one of the things we learned as we started rolling this out over the last 4 years is that the technical challenge here is actually the smallest problem, because there are emerging standards in the world we're in, and W3C, the worldwide consortium, Worldwide Web Consortium, has developed standards around verifiable credentials, and Distributed Identity Foundation has developed the DID method for distributed identity and other methods. So the technical challenges are actually not the biggest challenges to really create this global interoperable ecosystem. What we've learned is that actually the layers above that are much more complex. And most of the work of our foundation is not on technology. It's not on this blockchain layer or the technical interoperability. It's actually on the layers that are described here above. And I'll go through them very rapidly, but happy to discuss them further with any of you. One is structural interoperability. There is not common syntax and schemas for employment and education data around the world. There are some standards bodies like HR Open and IMS Global and or now One Ed Tech and others, but they're not adopted globally. And the Europeans use Europass for education, and the Americans are developing a CLR. So if there's no one common language, how do we transfer these data from one system to another? People who graduate from university in Timbuktu and move to Kansas, how will I even understand what that credential looks like and what its structure is? The even more complex problem is semantic interoperability. What does a credential actually mean? We all use different taxonomies to describe skills, ontologies to describe jobs. Even my degree, I have a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Ben-Gurion University. I assume most of you never heard of Ben-Gurion University. Industrial engineering means something different in the US, in Israel, and in India. And I graduated in 1997. You may ask yourself, did he have to study any computing? Were there even computers in Israel in 1997? So, it's meaningless to say that I have a degree if you don't know how to interpret what that degree actually means and what skills it gave me and so on. The layer that we actually spent the most amount of time and money on is legal interoperability. If I'm a hospital and I hire a nurse based on getting her credentials, what happens if something goes wrong? Who's liable? What if it turns out someone made a mistake and issued a credential along the way? Who do I sue if something goes wrong? How do I know I'm compliant to labor laws, to privacy regulations, to FCRA requirements if I'm a background screening company? So the biggest investment the Velocity Network has done is actually in creating a whole framework for governance and legal compliance around the world. And that's not an easy challenge. And it's a continuous effort, but we're very confident around that. And the last is business process interoperability. And I'll explain this with an example. I take off from home and land in the US, turn on my phone, and it connects to Sprint or AT&T. And you ask, how do I get service, right? So I have an iPhone, so it has a 5G chip. The technical interoperability is that my phone connects to a local tower and they talk to each other. But why is Sprint or AT&T giving me service? Because somewhere underlying the global communication industry are agreements that Sprint will receive payment for giving me service, right? So there is an underlying infrastructure of business agreements and payment terms and so on that we don't know anything about and we don't care as users, but we want to know that it works, right? And the same thing is true with velocity. Everyone needs to know the rules of the game. Who's paying, who's getting paid, how much am I getting paid, and so on. In the end, this is a world of business, and we need to know this all works. So this is all this infrastructure has been put in place. It's never frozen. It's continuous work in progress. And one of the opportunities for members of our foundation is to contribute to the continuous development of the ideas behind all these things. So where are we? So we launched the foundation 4 years ago. It took about 2 years to build the technology. And in the last 6 months or 5 months, you can see the line at the bottom, that pink, it doesn't look like it's moving, but it actually was going up, not compared to what's happened since May. So, and in May this year, the first few of our members really started launching solutions on the Velocity network. We currently have 75 members. I think about 25 of them are already live with solutions, and a few dozen more will be launching in the near future. We have 1.2 million credentials, over 1.2 million credentials as of today. And as you can see, the vast majority of those are just with, the hockey stick move in the last few months. That's growing rapidly. And what's really cool, you can see the world map. So everywhere it's in blue is actually a person we know. We have at least one individual with Velocity-enabled verifiable credentials. So we're working on Greenland. If anyone has any connections there, North Korea is a little challenging. So is Iran, as you can see. But really everywhere in the world, or almost everywhere in the world, we have people already who have a Velocity-enabled wallet and a Velocity verifiable credential. And that's growing rapidly, and we're looking forward to enabling your solutions and having you be able to transact with your users and employers and customers through leveraging this technology. So that is what I wanted to share as an opening, but I hope I've triggered a lot of questions, thoughts, even some arguments, so I'd love to open that up for you guys.
Yeah, thanks, Etan. There's been so many great comments in the chat, and I'm a huge fan of interoperability. And I mean, hey, Steve Rader, you've thrown down some great stuff in the chat. Maybe you could grab the mic and voice some of that, and let's get the dialogue rolling.
Yeah, I mean, I just think this is one of the most important capabilities to make this whole thing work, right? And I think there are several things that I'm still looking for. Like, one, I want to figure out how I go ahead and get mine. And then if I have a community of people, how can I make it kind of available and do that? So I might want to get with you offline on that. Or if you want to share that broadly with the team. I think the other thing is around this digital exhaust piece that you mentioned, that somebody's worked so many safety hours, or, that data. I've talked to several platform owners who they see that as their competitive edge, or some of it, and kind of teasing out, what can they give to the individual without kind of giving away the farm, while still providing them valuable information. And it's almost like there's some real study and standards to go there on, what should be considered mine as a worker, almost a workers' rights issue, right? Versus what can a company keep that's personal of yours. And interestingly enough, I think this could become not just a hub for worker information, but for personal information. So when I sign up with my electrical company, I would love to be able to use this as my token to create an account, so that then I get all of the data associated with my account that I then own a copy of, right? And so I can see this extending several ways, but obviously I think you got the right focus for right now, and you definitely don't want to go too far. But those are my thoughts.
So I would like to relate to your main thought there, because about who owns this, and I think that's to put it on the table in this forum. I think it's a real challenge, and I've had discussions with many talent platforms that their resistance was that their view of their IP and their competitive advantage is the knowledge and the information they're creating about the transactions and the feedback that the individual has on their platform. I'm not arguing, I'm representing their perspective on that. If I have talent who's using my platform, they've had 10 assignments, I have 8 feedback from their customers on that performance. That's part of what makes my platform sticky. People want to be able to view those reviews, and I don't want to release those reviews to the individual to be able to take to other platforms, right? Let's put it on the table. I see some of you shaking your heads. I think that's a big dilemma. Personally, I have a very clear view on what I think, how they think the world should operate, and who's earned that feedback, and who should be owning it. But it's my personal view. I obviously am not in your position. I don't own a talent platform. But I think it is a big dilemma of what you gain by being a closed island, as big an island as you may be, and what you gain, because when you're sharing, you're also receiving. And what happens to the industry and what happens to your market when you're providing that valuable feedback to the individual to take to other platforms, but you're also receiving that valuable feedback from other platforms. What happens in the market? How do things develop? Who gains and who loses from that? I think it's a real dilemma in your part of the industry. Again, I have my very clear view on where this should go, but each of you need to make your own personal decisions about that.
Hey, John, if I can chime in for
go, John.
The temporary staffing industry, which a lot of people on the call know I came from, and have chaired a task force for the World Employment Confederation that's made up of your largest staffing companies. Your 10 largest staffing companies have all adopted into this and recognized that this is going to change things, that the data that they collect when people come to their office physically or virtually is the property of the worker. So they're all trying to figure things out. And I was with them in South Africa. We had representatives from 50 countries last week. We issued them all credentials as board members so that they could feel the experience and see, okay, this isn't as complex and difficult as maybe they saw. It didn't require them to change their tech stack to do it, that they were able to get through that. That was a big shift. Also in the UK 2 weeks earlier, where they brought together the digital leads from the largest staffing companies in the UK, and they all came on board and said, you know what, the healthcare system in the UK is a mess because you have doctors leaving from one hospital and doing temporary work or part-time work at the next one. But you have to go back, and it's an 8-week process to re-verify the credentials at the hospital that they're already an employee at, to get them to work on a temporary project that's available to them. The degree of frustration within the industry is mounting, and I would just challenge everyone in this platform sector that the other labor market intermediaries have started to recognize this and are beginning to move forward. And I think seeing that little chart of the hockey stick and the million credentials having been verified, it caused a different, I was able to witness people's faces change and to say, okay, we need to think about this differently. So, not only do I think it's the right thing to do for people, the workers in particular, I think it's going to be a competitive necessity over the next couple of years to be able to be in this space and to do that. So I just challenge everyone to think back about their purpose, or think about human-centric design, and are we truly trying to do something for the worker? Because I think there's a real difference maker.
I love that, John. Thanks. That's really awesome. Hey, Una, I'm going to call on you because you and I have had so many great conversations. We had a great podcast a couple of weeks ago. But tell us like your point of view on it as a small platform, up and coming platform. Is this a benefit for you? How do you view this opportunity?
Oh my God, it's I find it all kind of quite overwhelming, I have to say. I'm kind of new to the technology behind all of this, so I don't think I'm going to be able to answer that question very insightfully for you, John. I'd like to pass on to somebody else.
Yeah, that's okay. Anybody else that's on that has a platform out there that might want to take that, and because I think that's, to me, at the crux. When I was talking to Dror a couple of years ago, right? I think you guys had a couple platforms when you guys started in the foundation, but then they dropped out because of this kind of protecting their data. And I'm with you, Etan. I think that and John, same. I think we've got to do this together, and it's got to be for the workforce, and it's got to create that kind of momentum. Maybe I'm going to pick on Dave Messenger, because Dave, you and I had some conversations even before we were aware of velocity, and I thought you always had a really strong point of view of things.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely for the sharing, and you know, at the end of the day, you know, even just if you want to think as a platform trying to cover your own ass, excuse my French, you know, you don't want to have all that PII information or be seen as the owner or the controller of someone's background check information. So being able to share that, having it out on a third party, being able to like provide that value add to the developer or to your talent, I should say, your member base that can share that information is just so much more valuable than, you know, you don't want to build the walled garden where you control everyone's data. At the end of the day, the value add to you is that you shouldn't build the better mousetrap. You should be providing more value. And so I think the more you can put out there or you can share, and then, you know, figure out what your value add is to your community or your member base. That's the right way of thinking versus the walled garden thoughts, in my opinion.
Yeah, I love that. And Dave, one other question for you. I know we're kind of limited on time, but you know, Mike showed me your essentially, I forget the name of the effort you've created, like a Strava like thing for, you know, technologists that can start, you know, getting data on how well they're doing compared to everybody else. It seems like that's a perfect kind of data set to go on to a, you know, this platform and this interoperability to show that, hey, I'm in the first prototype. You might want to just talk about what you're doing and then talk about kind of how that would fit into this credentialing.
Yeah, I mean, we've always had the thought of kind of consolidating data sources across like GitHub, other data, so we can give a concise view to developers and give some value add to say like, hey, here's, you know, obviously I'm speaking developers because that's kind of our niche. And we have a tool, like you said, it's kind of the Strava or the Fitbit where we track. I have ability to give people back data around like where they're focused, where they're spending the time, how they're doing the development pieces. But again, you know, we don't want that to be seen as our proprietary data. That's really, it's the developers using that data, that's using their own area. It's their data. So how do we, I think that's a perfect fit for this, is giving it back to them that they can do more with it. You know, we kind of look at it sort of like in the, you know, iOS system with like the Apple Health is sort of the same way as like our kind of, we're more like the Apple Watch where we're tracking all the data, but it goes into an Apple Health that the talent's going to want to know, you know, hey, what is my scale saying? What is my Fitbit saying? What is my glucose monitor saying? And that there's going to be all these things, and the easier you can make it to interoperability between all those items to give people a better sense of their own kind of personal data. And then the value add is being able to take that data and go to other spots or share that back with the platform. And I think our thought too is the more that we give back that they can take to other places, the more they'll share with us as well, that then we can use that to provide better insights, to provide better data and better matching and logic in our own platform.
Yeah, I love that. Hey, there's one other question. Do we have time for one more? How does everybody feel? So one more? I mean, we're right at time. Okay, let's Steve Rader, I think you just pointed out to a really great, you know, idea is like what happens internally, right? Is this a system internally for HR?
Yeah, so
yeah, speeds it all up, right? And make
right. So just two really quick examples. So HCA Healthcare, one of the biggest healthcare systems in the world, and the US, one of the biggest in the US and in the world, is one of our main early adopters across many of their systems and processes. And their main usage is not just recruiting and onboarding, it's actually for internal mobility and continuous learning, and in healthcare, because there's so much work around credential management and license renewal and continuing education. All that can be tracked digitally much easier with verifiable credentials. So that's one example. And just another, just to throw out, to really think big, we did a presentation with the leadership of the HR tech team at Walmart. Walmart transfers today data, employee data, to 1,600 different vendors every year or on a regular basis, right? It's training vendors, 401k vendors, benefits vendors, right? All this data, all this PII is being transferred from Walmart to these third parties. And it's a real concern for them. I mean, a big risk, a lot of data management agreements and so on. when we started imagining what would a world will look like if Walmart would just issue this data to the individuals, and individuals would share only what they need, only for the purpose of what they need from the specific third parties that are giving them personally services on behalf of Walmart. But what that would look like, how that would reduce Walmart's risk, how that changes building integrations and systems and agreements and audits, right? So that's just another whole nother world of how self-sovereign identity and individual ownership of data completely changes the relationships between organizations and people and data potentially.
I love it. I love you guys, and thanks for sticking around for the last of this, but it's super good, Etan, and just love to see the progress you guys are making. Love the hockey stick on the number of credentials. Really great stuff. And I hope you'll come back and in a bit and share kind of the latest learnings. And again, I think, two things that I take away would be great to do the same thing that John said, John Healy said. How do we get everybody in the community to kind of get credentialed and start playing, experimenting with it? I think it would then give people like Una the ability to say, oh, this is a real benefit, or oh, I have some questions on it, without that visceral
I'm happy to issue to
play.
everyone who was here a credential of attending a session on Velocity. If Brandon can get me everyone's emails, you'll get an invitation to download a Velocity wallet and get your first verifiable digital credential.
Awesome. That sounds great. Because I think that's the first step of the conversation, right? Is like, let's start playing with it and figuring it out. And we can have another dialogue here soon. But thanks so much, Etan, and the rest of the folks. Love you guys. Thanks for being here. As always, great conversation.
Thanks, everyone.
All the best.
Thanks
Bye.
all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.